Hello, testing 1, 2, 3. Ron.
Steve Wozniak in La Plaza de Toros de las Ventas. Welcome, Steve, to Madrid.
Oh, muchas gracias.
Excellent, and you're speaking Spanish as well. How has your trip been?
Trip has been excellent here. Met so many great people and got to speak and inspire some at a university as well as others, but let's go on.
Excellent,
No
and
need to
this is
delay.
going to be a great inspiration for the entrepreneurs having you here in Madrid.
Yeah,
And
I'm amazed at how much is going on here. I mean, I came to Madrid many years ago and I met young people that were so excited in being a part of all this new technology, you know, and the mobile social apps and things like that. So it's great to see how much is going on in this part of the world.
there's fierce excitement, and we believe not only a technology revolution is happening in Spain, but an entrepreneurial revolution.
Yeah.
And as a pioneer of this revolution, we're thrilled to have you here.
And every place in the world wishes they had a revolution going on as well as here.
Excellent, thanks, Steve. Steve, we're here and we're so excited, and you can feel the excitement in the room because we are thrilled to have your story directly from the horse's mouth, as they say. So can you bring us back to the beginning and tell us a little bit about your life at the time in the 70s when you came up with the idea or dreamed about having?
Yeah. First of all, sometimes what are your inspirations in life? Movies you see, books you read, teachers that are important, and you say, this is what I want to be in life. So I knew that I loved designing computers. I didn't know it was going to be my job necessarily. Got so skilled at it. Even in high school, when there were no books, there was nothing that told you how to design a computer, I taught myself and became very skilled. And I could just sit down with an idea, a video game, a terminal, a hotel movie system, and I could just whip out designs real quick. So that was my life. I met Steve Jobs, and we were very similar. We cared about, we're very passionate about the world, empathetic with people, searching for religions like you do when you're young and humble and have no money. And we were into going to concerts together and playing pranks. And to me, pranks with electronics, when you can pull tricks on people and they don't know how you're doing it because it's electronic, it's fun. So I decided that everything you do that's work should have an element of fun in it as well. And then eventually came the time I had wanted a computer my whole life, and I used a computer where I worked, Hewlett-Packard. And I would sign up for time and type in programs and run them on a big computer, and I would share the computer with a lot of other engineers. But I wanted my own. I had wanted it my whole life, and all of a sudden I was around a bunch of people that were not so technical. They were more social psychologists. They were from the universities, Stanford, Berkeley. They were talking about how communication was going to be changed if we all had our own computers. We would control our environment if we had our own computers. We would educate better if we had our own computers. And if we learned how to program them, we could solve problems that only the huge $1 million computers could solve, but we could solve them better. And I loved this idea, so my skill was building the machines. So I went out and I saw the formula to build a useful computer that could even do my engineering work at Hewlett-Packard, and yet it was going to be affordable to a human being. And I saw the formula, I built the machine, and I really didn't think there was going to be any business. There was going to be a lot of money or a successful company, so I gave away the designs for free. And Steve Jobs didn't even know it existed yet. He was out of town. So when he came into town, I took him to the computer club, and I showed him. I was kind of a hero at the club. Don't believe the movies, like that one with Ashton Kutcher. And I showed him, and he saw the excitement. And when you're humble, you have no money, you have to think of first steps that are very tiny. So the first step that Steve Jobs proposed was, let's form a company, and we've been selling my stuff for 5 years already. One project after another. Steve Jobs always turned into money because he had zero money. Sometimes that's a blessing. And he said, let's build a part of it and sell the part. And eventually, a local store wanted the whole computers. And that put us in business, yeah. And little did we know that the business was going to climb like this. As a matter of fact, the real computer we started with was going to bring games, say games are a part of your computer. Arcade games in those days were black and white. Our Apple II computer was color. Arcade games were hardware designs that took a man-year to design a game. And our Apple II, you could write simple programs. A 9-year-old kid could write simple programs in BASIC and make colored objects move on a screen. So we had a huge step with this Apple II computer. We knew that was the one that was going to change the world and start the company, but our first ideas were totally erroneous. We set out, you know, you hear about, oh, you have to get through failures. Well, we didn't really have failures, but we thought, oh my gosh, people are going to use the computer for one thing and another thing and another thing. And all of those things were so meaningless in life that if that's all they had done, balance your checkbook and store your recipes for the kitchen, if that's all it had done, this industry would have died. But fortunately, a computer is a platform, and millions of people out there are allowed to write programs and design extra hardware and put in boards with more memory and better displays and connecting to sensors and keyboards for music and boards that could play good music into speakers and disk drives and everything in the world. The community out there was invited to participate. We had a platform. You do what you make the best you can out of it. And the first killer app of all time came. The word killer app was born. And it was a spreadsheet. The very first spreadsheet was called Visicalc. A small businessman could put categories of income and expenses for his company, January, February, March, April, May. Make a change in January and see the effects in December instantly. And it blew them away. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. Because the big computers that you had in the huge companies that were running all the computer stuff, a manager would have to order a report, wait a few days, get the report printed out, study it, and it was boring, and you couldn't really see things in real time. You didn't have that emotional effect, so now the small computer could finally do something the big ones couldn't, and that was a surprise. In other words, we thought certain things were going to make a computer market, but it was really very different things.
Incredible. And it's wonderful to see, Steve, the passion that you speak about it today. You are obviously absolutely love what you do. This must have been what was driving you.
Well, back in those years I'm talking about, those were the most passionate, exciting times because we felt we were starting a revolution, that really there was going to be a place for everyone to own a computer, and it was going to be Steve Jobs wanted the idea of a big company because that's how you become important. And I didn't care about promoting myself or being important. I just wanted to keep running engineering, go into the laboratory and be that little inventor guy. And I wanted other engineers to look at my designs and say, whoa, this is way different than in the books. This is really out of the book. This is a totally different approach. Your engineering is excellent, and I got that accord, so that's what I wanted.
And that combination, Steve, of engineering and design talent, I mean, was that really kind of nature versus nurture? Were you born with that? How did you discover that as a talent?
Well, actually, I put the artistic art into my discipline, which was designing every parts of computers, building them, doing the hardware, doing the software, everything by hand. And Steve Jobs wanted a business. You have to have somebody who wants a business, who wants to make money out of it, and then the money will let you grow and turn your ideas into bigger ideas and make even better things. You need a businessman, but you also need marketing. We had a third partner who owned as much of the company as we did. He was our investor, an angel investor. He ran marketing. We were a marketing-driven company. He taught us what were the important essential ingredients of marketing, and Steve Jobs started learning this stuff interfacing with him. Steve never tried to be technical because I had that covered. So now he was going to be, well, what are the meanings to human beings? He was going to order the parts. He was going to, get orders for computers. And we learned to be very professional and hire all the right people. Our third partner is the one who had business experience. He was older. Steve and I were in our young 20s. We had no money, no checking accounts, no savings accounts. We had no business experience. But Mike Markkula, our funder, taught us you hire these people to have a technology company. And here's what each one of them does. And so he was really the one that established the company. But Steve Jobs is very smart, and he would always interface with everyone running business at the top of the company, making any decisions, and he would kind of poke in. If they were making a box in blue, Steve would say, why not make it in red? And he would argue, and very often he was the right one. He was smarter than the others.
Awesome. It's amazing.
So you needed three elements that we had in Apple that were very important. We had, a very incredible product, so you need good engineering. We had a product that was going to be all of the profits of Apple for the first 10 years. And that was already done. The Apple II was finished. Working model. When people ask me, oh my gosh, I have an idea. I got to go raise some money and build this thing. I tell them, try to get a working model. or at least a simulation on a computer screen that people can try, because when you raise the money, you will own more of it, and people will understand what you have a lot better that way. So we had the good engineering, we had the business drive in Steve Jobs, and we had incredible marketing, which became Steve Jobs. Those things can exist in two people or one person at the start. I don't know, it doesn't happen too often in one person, or three people or more.
So you had a really well-balanced team from the early days that helped you get going and get the company off the ground.
Right, but we also hired, some good legal support, accounting, operations, manufacturing, testing. Bit by bit, we had very professional outcome. Up until the point we started the company, 7 of the first 10 people that contributed to our first product, the Apple II computer, 7 of the first 10 went to the same high school. You see, when you start something with little money, you have your friends. Your friends are helping you. You start in your house.
Exactly. And
yeah.
Steve,
and we really didn't have a garage as a company, but we did have a garage that represented us.
Excellent, spot on, the cliche of the entrepreneur in the garage now. Can you talk to us, Steve, a little bit about what the ecosystem was at the time? Spain is an emerging startup ecosystem, but with you guys tinkering away, working on things, with this vision of trying to get a personal computer into everybody's home at a time when nobody had this. This doesn't even exist. It was a totally revolutionary idea. Was there a support structure? What did your parents think? What did your friends think?
Oh, brother. most everybody in the world thought this is never going to be successful. It's never going to make money. If you had to pay yourself for your own time, you'd be losing money. It was hard to see when something is worth $0 that eventually it's going to be worth a lot. You don't see it at first. And that's one of the reasons the big surprises, the disruptive moves in technology are ones that a lot of people, especially the ones that are already in the business, don't think it's going to be big. The big computer companies thought these little small computers would never do an important job, and they ignored it, and that let the young people who don't care and don't know that that it's going to fail, they're willing to go in and try it out, and just the excitement of the times. And when you don't have any money, you don't need any money either. You don't have to make much money.
Yeah, exactly.
The infrastructure at the time was a lot of companies in Silicon Valley had spun off other companies. Spun off, meaning talented executives and managers and engineers left to form their own company that was sort of similar. But young people coming just out of college or not even completing college, starting companies was very, very rare. It was almost unheard of. And then all of a sudden, you have Bill Gates and Paul Allen, leaving college to start Microsoft, and Steve Jobs and myself, and small companies coming out of college, Yahoo, for example, and over time, Facebook out of a dorm. All of a sudden, it's become a world where any young person with a good idea has a way to succeed. Whereas in the past, you had to have access to enough money and capital to build hardware. Now you can do a lot of it with just software.
Exactly.
So, but around the time we started, all the computers were hugely expensive and hard to afford. Now, a lot of people were trying to come up with this microprocessor chip is like a brains on a chip, and it costs $400, but if you bought them in quantity, maybe you could get it for, like $50. And it's the brains of a computer. We could make a computer affordable, and they were building the big old boxes of the old days with switches and lights and buttons, and you don't know how to use it. It's not human. And you punch a bunch of 0 switches to 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, and push a button, and it goes into memory somewhere. That was the old way. I had built that computer 5 years before. I was super advanced in computers because my youth had been teach myself how to design them, even though I could never afford to build one. But I had built that kind of computer 5 years before. And you move past it. You want things that are human. I worked at Hewlett-Packard on the scientific calculators, the handheld scientific calculator. Well, scientific calculator had a little program running that said, is a key being pressed? And when you pressed the 5 button, it said, aha, the 5 button got pressed. I'll put a 5 in the display. And then I'll go back and say, is a key being pressed? Is a key being pressed? But you could pull a calculator out of the box, press 5, 6, plus. You could do all the operations, and they worked. A computer, you'd have to toggle all these buttons and learn computer language. You'd have to be a computer expert to use it. I sat down and I thought, I hate these front panels. I hate big mechanical things. I hate having to drill tons of holes. I drilled hundreds of holes and mounted hundreds of switches on science fair projects, when I was in elementary school, but That's for the birds. I wanted a computer that I could sit down and type a program in to solve a problem. And that meant a keyboard. So a keyboard, and how input-output cost more than computers in those days. To buy printers, teletype machines you could type on and all that, they would cost, as much as a couple of cars. And my approach was, how do you get the cost down to nothing? When you have no money, you're forced to think, how do I make things efficient? And my approach was a keyboard that cost very little, and your own television set at home. You already owned it, so it was free for output. And that was the formula of this thing that became the Apple I computer, and it was given away to the public domain, so even Apple doesn't own the design of it. But the Apple I computer gave away the formula for what a personal computer should be. Every computer after the Apple I had a keyboard and a video display. Every computer before the Apple I had a big old metal front panel of switches and lights, and the old, too much of the geeky stuff in the way.
No, it's incredible.
And all of Apple's history was trying to make computing easier, and that's by putting our programs in to make it work in natural ways that humans understand.
Absolutely, more
and
and more
now you
intuitive.
can even talk to it.
Yeah, exactly. It's just incredible. And we think of those times and we look how far technology has come, and you guys democratized access to technology, and that trend has continued. Today, we see tech companies being built out of all four corners of the world, which is super exciting, I think. And I wanted to ask, what are the emerging technologies now or opportunities that you see that if you were starting again today, you'd be excited to get involved in?
Wow, if I was starting today, I'd probably work down at some of the little Arduino and Raspberry Pi boards and hook them up to lots of motors and try to make robots that did actually interesting things to show off to my friends. And if I discovered something really useful, like a little robot that could sit in the driveway all night long washing my car, wow, I'd say, wow, man, maybe I'll even sell this one.
Exactly.
I'd probably be working down at that little lower level where you can actually program a microprocessor and know how all the registers are inside, but that's not normal. Today, a lot of the big excitement is, of course, Internet of Things means almost everything you've ever had in your life. How can I apply it to the internet and get more functionality than I had before? And there's no quick definition. Everything you look at, you can come up with your own ideas. And every time I see somebody doing another Internet of Things type project, it surprises me how much they did. It's starting out where we can just be in contact with our smartphone with devices back home, see what the temperature is, unlock a door, look at a camera, or I can honk the horn on my car in the garage and shock my wife. I do that once in a while. So that's the, but the Internet of Things is easy to get into. So a lot of startups are going to go for projects that qualify as Internet of Things, things that weren't on the internet in the past, but they can get more functionality, do more for us. They can be learning a bit, and that. I think the biggest area in the future is artificial intelligence, but it's kind of like you almost have to go through the university and qualify and take a lot of courses in artificial intelligence. My way in the old days was things that were way beyond me that I had never done in my life. I would sit down, and I just had a good mind, and I would think out how should it be done without knowing how it's done. And I would kind of write the new book without reading the old book. So everything I did was, almost illegal by the old methods of generating color. Figured out how to generate color for $1 instead of $1,000 because the other way was too expensive and too awkward and had to try something simpler. Always keep, one of the ways to get a better design that costs less and get better products is finish something that you've got in your head, finish your goal, and sit back and say, what could I have done to improve it? What could I have done that other human beings wouldn't think of? Because if you're doing the same things as other human beings, you're competing with them. If you're doing something they wouldn't have done, you're all on your own, and that's a nice way to start a company.
Sure, exactly.
But in the future, I think artificial intelligence, understanding spoken language, natural language, I think we've got to get away from. When we moved to the mouse-based computers with the Macintosh, we said human beings don't want to memorize commands that transfer files from one place in a directory to another. First of all, Steve Jobs was not technical, and he didn't like concepts of files, directories, megabytes, any of that stuff. We want to get rid of it over time. But rather than doing that, you just sort of point and you drag something in front of your eye, and you can see that a file moved into a folder. All these human terms, it got so human. And now, I'm tired of structure. I do not want to memorize this app, type here, put this field in here, and do that, and you'll get your job done. I don't want to remember a whole sequence of steps. I just want to speak the idea that's in my head. It is so easy and natural. At one point in time, we had a product where you could handwrite it with your own muscles and your own handwriting. And I just loved that concept of when a human being can express something in human terms and the computer can understand them, that's what I want for life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We do too,
but
Steve.
And artificial intelligence, everyone talks about self-driving cars. Every car manufacturing company in 5 years is going to have self-driving cars on the road that at least avoid accidents at first. But they're going to have the capabilities very easily at the same time of being totally hands-off self-driving. And once we analyze the accident rates, that might become law.
Yeah, no, it's interesting opportunities and some risks, and I think in the mass markets there's some generated fear there, but definitely in this community it's more excitement than anything else. It's amazing to see that you guys started by automating simple tasks and trying to be as intuitive as possible, and those motivations haven't changed today. I think tech companies today, even just building apps or more digital-focused companies, are still trying to do the same thing.
Yes, however, the industry today is so large that the big tech companies can build huge, huge projects that no one human being can do. And usually a startup is on the level of just a few people can come up with an idea and do it themselves. So most startups will start out with a small little project that kind of does a little bit and over time grows up bigger and bigger. We found that at Apple. We'd start out with one computer and it would grow and grow and grow in its capabilities and enhancements. We didn't try to shoot for the moon and try to develop the real far-off product that we know we're going to have someday, and then maybe we'll come up with cheaper versions of it for people. No, I don't think it works that way in technology very often.
Good advice, Steve. And just on final parting words, unfortunately, precious time that was just wrapping up. For all these young entrepreneurs out here, so excited to see you today, that might see the world in a little different way or might think differently, but are nervous, what would be your words of encouragement for them to go for it and seize the opportunities that they have?
Well, first of all, when you're young, you have the greatest amount of mental energy and the greatest amount of physical energy, meaning you can work long, long hours late into the night and keep yourself up. Have interesting projects. The first thing is you need an income, you need to live, you need to have an apartment. You better get a job somewhere. You better have some sort of income somewhere. Work on your ideas, and as I said, work on them as fully as you can. Get them developed, get other people interested in it, talk about it with friends are very important in this. I wouldn't have done what I did, any of my designs, if I didn't have people around me that said, wow, that is cool, showing it off. And work on that as much as you can, get it as far along as you can, and if you do it privately, you'll come up with something that is totally working. Now, you might come up with a bunch of projects. I built a lot of fun ones in my life, and some of them had no commercial value, no value to start a company, but I learned. I got better and better in my head at how to make the next project, how to talk about it, how to think about it, how to use parts in a very efficient, low-cost manner. And so step by step by step, they weren't failures. They were just the fun things I did on the way to the big one. And when you hit a big one, you know that, wow, an awful lot of people want this. Maybe it's the spreadsheet when Mark Zuckerberg was working on it. You instantly sense that, my gosh, the whole world wants this thing. This is big. You know when you hit a home run.
Awesome. Steve Wozniak, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Wish I had more time.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Steve.